According to reports from The Athletic, the Eagles may be losing some really big names like Gardner Johnson, Fletcher Cox, and Brandon Graham. And Philadelphia parts ways with one of their best defensive coaches while eyeing another one to fill the linebackers opening. Why that would be a terrible mistake. Plus, it was supposed to be Bijan Robinson's weekend, but which potential number one pick upstaged him? But first, let's run it. Hey everybody, Josh Davis here, and I hope you all had an amazing weekend. So much content to get into, but first, please make sure to like and subscribe. Really appreciate all the support, but we got a lot to jump in here for. So there were reports, and you guys may have already seen this, but from ESPN and The Athletic, that the Eagles could be losing a lot of free agents. And I know we've heard a lot of different names, and there's other rumors, but there's now a report, and it lists several specific names. So check this out here. This is from the Eagles Wire on USA Today. Eagles could be on the verge of losing Gardner Johnson to a massive free agent deal. Quote, the Eagles are set for a major retool this offseason, and with all-pro quarterback Jalen Hurts set to sign a massive contract extension, some big-name defenders could be on the move to really greener pastures. The Birds have 9 key contributors on defense set to hit free agency, and stars like Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, James Bradberry, Javon Hargrave, TJ Edwards, and Gardner Johnson could all cash out money on the open market. According to Zach Berman of The Athletic, Philadelphia could be on the verge of losing Gardner Johnson to a huge deal on the open market. It says the Eagles will have a list of headliners signings elsewhere in 2 weeks. General Howie Roseman has actually been transparent about this reality in public statements. It doesn't mean they won't try to keep some of their top free agents. You'll find those who speculate Philadelphia will be aggressive trying to keep Hargrave and Gardner Johnson, but the way the Eagles are banking on 2024 compensatory picks shows they're resigned to the reality that they won't re-sign top free agents. Look for Hargrave, Gardner Johnson, James Bradberry, and Isaac Seumalo to all sign deals that put them at or near the top of their positions and give the Eagles a favorable spot for the compensatory pick formula. Those compensatory picks won't be available until April 2024, and you'll likely see an Eagles team that's explosive on offense and forced to win a majority of their games next season by outscoring opponents, end quote. And then it goes on to kind of talk about Reed Blankenship, Marcus Epps, the different options and what the Eagles might do there. But it's very interesting, and I know, again, we've heard lots of rumors, but now we're starting to hear kind of specific names and big deals, and what are teams going to do with these guys? So, yeah, all of them, you could argue, I mean, the defense was fantastic, and sure, we're going to lose players. Howie said it multiple times, like the article mentions here, but the question then becomes, okay, which guys? And I know that we've heard a lot of reports of, hey, Gardner Johnson is going to be franchise tagged, but, as the time of this recording, he still hasn't been tagged. Now, remember, the tag deadline for the franchise tag is this Wednesday, so there's still some time, but it's a little bit concerning, and it's telling, too, of what position Howie Roseman and the Eagles might take, because if there's no long-term deal that's signed, you at least franchise tag to buy yourself more time to say, okay, let's get something signed in the future. But the fact that they still haven't placed the tag on Gardner Johnson, yeah, it's a little bit concerning. We're questioning, okay, well, are they going to go with him? Or are they going to look to fill a void somewhere else? I know that Reed Blankenship played well in CJ's absence late in the season when he was injured, but still, CJ is I mean, you could argue a couple other players, but pretty much the heart and soul of the defense, at least in the defensive backfield. So it'll be curious to see what the Eagles do, what Howie goes with, but a very interesting article. Would love to know your guys' thoughts. Are you scared by this report? Do you think that there's some that may be leaving now that in the beginning we were thinking maybe not, like CJ Gardner Johnson, some others? Be curious to get you guys' thoughts. So let me know in the comments below. Okay, one Eagle or former Eagle now, I guess, who is not here is, and we kind of heard rumors and speculation, but now officially, Dennard Wilson. Did you guys see this? Dennard Wilson, the defensive backs coach for the Eagles, a very hot candidate, potential to be the defensive coordinator, and was very much neck and neck with Sean Desai before obviously the Eagles went with him. But the Eagles and defensive back coach Dennard Wilson decided to part ways. So also coming here from USA Today, and check out the article here. So it says by Ian Rappaport, so he reported it here on Twitter, but after being a finalist for the Eagles DC job that went to Sean Desai, Philly defensive pass game coordinator and DBs coach Dennard Wilson and the team are mutually parting ways, sources say. This is often the outcome when an in-house candidate is passed over for promotion. So, end quote. And then, the article kind of goes back through looking at Dennard Wilson's career, where he's come from. Obviously, he was very successful on Sirianni's staff. And let's be honest, I mean, This was the number one passing defense in the NFL. Yeah, you can look at some other metrics and, you could argue, okay, maybe they're second and third in some categories, but you just look at yardage, number one pass defense in the NFL. So Dennard Wilson deserves a ton of credit for getting this squad up to the level that they played. There's great talent, sure, but it comes down to the coaches putting them in the right positions. Now, I know that Jonathan Gannon was there and he made some mistakes, but the guy who is specifically focused just on the defensive backs area is Dennard Wilson. And he was phenomenal throughout the season. There's a couple of slip-ups, but everybody's going to have them. But the number one defense, that speaks for itself. So the fact that you lose Wilson, it's a little disconcerting because that's a big name. And now we got to fill another position, it feels like. Not only do we have that, but we got the linebackers coach opening. So again, there's a lot of missing pieces here. And right now it just feels like we're putting stopgaps on the leaking boat. We've got, hey, here's an opening. And now we fill it. Oh, there's another opening. Now we got to fill this position. So again, I'm sure there's other good candidates out there, and I know that Howie and Nick will do their due diligence and try to figure out who that will be. But I hate to lose someone like that. He's an up-and-comer, great reports on Dennard Wilson. He's going to get snatched up in a hurry. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But, we'll have to see. Okay, so moving on to another topic, though, and you guys, again, probably had seen this that late yesterday, the rumors and the speculation started coming out about this, but I mentioned the linebackers coach. That's another position that needs to be filled. So who's going to get that spot? Well, there's reports now that Matt Patricia, the beat reporter from the New England Patriots, that's where I saw it first. I can't remember her name, but she had reported that Matt Patricia is a potential candidate, maybe even a leading candidate for the linebackers coach job. That would be terrible. That would be awful. Now, okay, I'll share maybe why I think that, but this is not a good hire because there's been reports of obviously Patricia having some issues as whenever he was the head coach with some of his players, even with the Patriots, players' frustration with Patricia, just not really relating well. But check out this article here because you guys remember Darius Slay has an issue with Matt Patricia. So this would be a terrible mistake. So this comes from SI.com. I don't normally get the articles here, but they did do a good job of bringing this back up, and I had forgotten about it until all of a sudden reading it here. It says with Patricia here, so quote, former Detroit Lions cornerback Darius Slay will not soon forget how former head coach Matt Patricia disrespected him in front of all of his teammates during a meeting. Speaking during the opening festivities in Arizona, the site of this year's Super Bowl, the talented defensive back shared again with reporters how he felt about Patricia. Patricia reportedly felt Slay should not have worked out with Richard Sherman and Aqib Talib, seemingly indicating to others that he was not as talented as the other aforementioned defensive backs. He basically just said, and this is in quotes, he basically just said, you are not in that category yet. At that time, I only had 1 Pro Bowl, but now I'm at 5. So I want to know how he feels about that now, Slay said. I don't wish bad on him, but as a man, me and him just don't get along. He's a smart coach. He knows his X's and O's, but the disrespect is not what I'm with, end quote. That speaks for itself. Slay and him don't get along. Now, if we also reverse this, I know this is not the linebackers coach position, but Dennard Wilson was the man for Darius Slay. He spoke up and said, that's my guy. That's who I want as defensive coordinator. And CJ Gardner Johnson also echoed that and said, yeah, I'm on board, basically. So now you've got another situation of a coaching position potentially on the defensive side of the ball with a linebackers coach. And I don't think we even have to ask Slay because we've basically already asked him back at Arizona of, what do you think about him? And he says, absolutely not. So if we're looking to keep the same feel and camaraderie and the team spirit and just everyone fighting for each other, this is not the right hire. This is not the right move for the locker room. Sure, even as Slay said, he's a smart coach, but it's not always about getting the smartest coach. There's other ways. There's just still very smart coaches there, but I think this would be an awful hire, and it would really mess with the locker room vibes. Curious to know what you guys, though. Is Matt Patricia a good hire? Is this someone we should bring in? Even given the comments of Slay, is that someone that the Eagles should consider? Let me know in the comments below. It was a weekend, and you guys checked it out, I'm sure, the combine, but that weekend was supposed to be for Bijan Robinson. I mean, it was all set up. Everyone's talking about Bijan Robinson. How is he going to do? What's he going to run like? What's his 40 time going to be? But there was another man that stole the show. Anthony Richardson from Florida. This guy is a beast. And I knew he was a beast, but maybe not to the magnitude that we saw over the weekend. Oh my gosh. If you guys didn't see, I mean, take a look. So Jeff Legwold of ESPN, and here it says, quote, Florida Gators quarterback Anthony Richardson said he referred to himself as Cam Jackson because he liked Cam Newton and Lamar Jackson so much. During the quarterback workouts at the NFL Scouting Combine on Saturday, Richardson looked every bit as physically imposing as Newton and ran almost like Jackson. At 6'4", 244 pounds, Richardson set combine records for a quarterback with a vertical jump of 40.5 inches and a broad jump of 10 feet 9 inches. Richardson, in his only attempt, then uncorked an official clocking of 4.43 seconds in the 40-yard dash in Lucas Oil Field. End quote. The article goes on to compare him again to Cam Newton. The size is very similar. Cam Newton, 6'5", 248 pounds, but also the speed of Lamar Jackson. But this is insane. I mean, his speed, they listed out, I'll pull it back up here for you, but the fastest 40-yard dash times for quarterbacks here. I mean, look at this. This guy right here is fourth fastest among quarterbacks. And at his size, that's unbelievable. Again, I know it's just the physicality. There were still some throws, and he was a little shaky in some areas, even in the combine for the throwing portion of it. So yeah, there's obviously some red flags. But this is a guy that vaulted up the draft boards. I can guarantee you, the odds, if you're looking at Vegas odds for him to go number one, was I think plus 1,000 or plus 1,100, something like that. After the combine workouts, he's plus 300. So if that tells you anything, Vegas knows and they understand. There's a definite possibility someone's going to trade up and say, you know what, we can get him to throw a little bit better. We can build on the accuracy, but we want that physicality and someone with that athletic ability. It'll be crazy to see, but I think that will definitely help, and I'll get into it here in a second, of the Eagles' position at number 10. So moving on with the other quarterback situation, though, in a story coming out of the Combine this weekend. So Bryce Young, obviously a very hot topic and someone who everyone or most people seem to say the consensus number one quarterback in terms of potential and what he could bring to the NFL. But look at this story here. Again, from Jeff Legwold of ESPN. It says quarterback Bryce Young measures 5'10" and 1/8 of an inch and 204 pounds at the combine. Now, we know that he's a smaller quarterback. You know, he's always been that way. But it's interesting because his measurements are very small, and then he had this to say whenever he was kind of criticized or during his interview. But he says, Bryce Young says, quote, "I've been this size respectfully my whole life," Young said. "I know who I am and I know what I can do. For me, it's fair. Everyone can speculate, ask me every question. I'm going to continue to control what I can control, continue to keep working my hardest. I'm confident in myself. I know what I can do," end quote. The article goes on to kind of compare him to Kyler Murray and the differences of size and stature and who's been successful, who's not. But the only quarterbacks under 6 feet who've been drafted at the number one pick have been, besides Kyler Murray or in the first round, Kyler Murray and Johnny Manziel, and that's it. Like even Mike Vick that they bring up is still over 6 feet or at 6 feet. So it's always a concern. And again, it always comes up of, hey, the size is an issue to a certain extent. You could argue, yes, Kyler Murray has had some success in the NFL. Johnny Manziel, I'm not even going to go there. But I don't think that, there's legitimate concerns. And so if you're a team that's going to potentially trade up, it'll be curious to see if teams actually do that. Again, he was phenomenal at Alabama. Bryce Young is a stud, but in the NFL, it's just a different game. So curious to see on that. But the final quarterback story, just real quick and recapping, Daniel Jeremiah, who's on the NFL Network, great coverage all weekend long, but he talked about CJ Stroud. So this is a guy who I think is going a little bit unnoticed because there were quotes of him saying he's so good, it's just boring. And although CJ Stroud did not test in the athletic events, but he did throw and he performed in all those drills. And so Jeremiah had a really great quote here. So on Twitter, Jeremiah said, CJ Stroud is having one of the best throwing sessions I've seen at the Combine. He also said during the broadcast, you couldn't script a better day for him throwing the football. So he's very high on him. I know that a lot of people are high on CJ Stroud. Again, didn't do the metrics or the testing for as far as athleticism, but on March 22nd, he's going to do that at Ohio State's Pro Day, so everyone will get to see it. But it's going to be fun to see where this quarterback carousel and competition goes. It's not super important for the Eagles because we're not really in the quarterback market, as I'm sure we'd all agree. But what is very important is you've got three guys who did test very well or are showing kind of rising upwards in Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, and obviously CJ Stroud. Will Levis is the question mark, but here's why that's important. Eagles are at 10. We know that. there's 4 potential quarterbacks in the names that I just mentioned that could go above the Eagles pick at number 10. And I think that would be fantastic. If 4 quarterbacks go before 10, the depth in this draft that you saw over the weekend, and we'll get into more names and everything else on Wednesday at the Wednesday link with Thomas Mott. So be sure to check that out. The live show, 7 o'clock Eastern on Wednesday. But the depth in this draft for positions not named quarterback is incredible. So if 4 of those top 10 positions are picked at quarterback, I'm sorry, but it's going to be cherry picking for the Eagles at 10. I'm super excited. You couldn't be in almost a better spot, really, if you're Philadelphia. So number 10 is going to be phenomenal. There's going to be so many different names, and we'll get into that again at the Wednesday link with Thomas Mott, 7 o'clock Eastern on Wednesday. Okay, real quick, just recapping for others. I know that Bijan Robinson was a big name. Everyone was curious, what's he going to do at the combine? How's he going to run?
4.47.
Any fast enough there? He had a little stumble even at the start right there.
Okay, so a 4.46 officially. I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty solid. I'll be honest, just the fan in me, the NFL fan, wanted to see something in the 4.3s. I know that would be absurd. 4.46 is incredibly respectable for a guy of his size who can move like he can and super versatile. But it wasn't as overwhelming, I guess, as maybe what I was hoping or expecting for, because, I mean, if we remember, that's basically Ezekiel Elliott. Like, Ezekiel Elliott is over the hill, and he's kind of, in my opinion, pretty much washed up, so I wouldn't pursue that. But just in terms of, hey, what did he test in terms of the combine? Ezekiel Elliott was a 4.47, if I remember correctly, and he was 6 feet tall, 225 pounds. Bijan Robinson showed up 5'11", 215. He had slimmed down, probably trying to put his best time up as you can for the 40, but you're basically right there at Zeke Elliott. So nothing crazy out of the water, slower than Saquon Barkley. I'm not saying that Bijan's going to be bad or anything. He's going to have a phenomenal career, I believe, and every scout and everyone else is super high on him. But didn't really go as fast or as fast blazing speed. One guy who did, though, and you guys may have seen this, but Jahmyr Gibbs of Alabama.
Here Gibbs.
Good start, clean run.
He betters his time, too.
4.36. Okay, that's blazing. And now, again, this is another guy who I would love for the Eagles to have, but we know Howie Roseman does not value the running backs, and as deep as this draft is in the running back position, you could get a guy in the first round, you could get a guy in the 4th or 5th round probably, and be able to still slate them in there with Kenny G behind this offensive line, and they're going to be very successful. Maybe not to the same level of, obviously, if you slid a Bijan Robinson behind, but you just don't have the draft capital to do that. And in my opinion, I don't think you can. 2024 is setting up to be very interesting because, again, as we discussed earlier in the show, the compensatory picks, that's a fascinating headline and story, and you're going to get some because we're not going to be able to keep all the free agents, but Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be phenomenal. His speed and athleticism, it's just crazy. What we saw over the weekend in terms of just athleticism at every single position, it's like it gets better and better every single season, but it never fails to just blow my mind with the athleticism of these guys. So curious to see, lots more to come, obviously a lot more to break down. We'll get into that over the week and the upcoming news here, but we will be sure to keep you up to date on all the Eagles' latest news, what's going on with the free agency, if there's any franchise tagging, the deadline officially being Wednesday, but please make sure to like and subscribe. Appreciate all the support. Until next time, I'm Josh Davis, and this has been the Philly Special.